Hello, everybody. Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Oregon Fall Workshop, Civil Discourse in Today's Diverse World. I'm Becky Gladstone, League President. I'll take a moment to introduce the League, our fall workshop sessions, and today's speaker. The 101-year-old League is dedicated to making democracy work. We're getting ready for Oregon's almost newly redistricted 22 elections. We will again invite all Oregon candidates who share their campaign email addresses to list in the League's voters guides, free and nonpartisan through vote411.org. We will again urge you to check your voter registration, to be informed, to consider running for office yourself, and to vote by mail. Go Oregon. But this is still 2021. Pollster Celinda Lake said this morning in the Washington Post, people are exhausted. We have people deliberately saying, I'm just taking a break, enough. We understand, and we're here to help. Our student mock elections are a highlight of our civil discourse work. Many students clam up around political chatter and are really uncomfortable talking about values and partisan preferences. Nope. We are so pleased to hear that students share their mock election experiences with their families, and their communities can feel the difference. So we present these as a benefit to our League leaders, to our members, and now, thanks to meeting virtually, we're sharing publicly. Details are on our website, LWVOR.org. We're starting today with Engaging Differences, Constructive Conversation in a Diverse World. Join us tomorrow for Diffusing Contentious Conversations. I'm looking forward to this for our candidate forums and thinking of this fall's family Thanksgiving dinners. Friday evening, join us for the League of Women Voters of Oakland, Improving the Volunteer Experience. And Saturday, join us for our keynote, Professor Garrett Epps, Common Ground and Bridging Our Differences, viewed from his 10 years as a Supreme Court correspondent, 16 years as a constitutional law professor, all honing his impeccably civil and incisive wit. It is my pleasure now to introduce today's speaker, known to many of us already. Cheryl Graeve,
like on potatoes. You had it.
Is Director of National Programs for the National Institute for Civil Discourse at the University of Arizona. Cheryl works with communities and organizations to strengthen civil discourse and help bridge political divides. We're so pleased to welcome Cheryl again, joining us before as the National League Senior Director of Field Support for Engaging Differences, Constructive Conversation in a Diverse World. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Becky. Just so appreciate you and Sheila and Amanda for your help before getting on today, and really so pleased to be with all of you, some familiar faces and beloved LWV members. I am also a longtime member here I'm on the East Coast, out in Maryland, Prince George's County, near the DC area. So pleased to come to you both with civility and bridge building background and love of League and democracy in my veins. So for that, let me just say that I'm looking. Thank you for typing into the chat sort of where you're from, and what's one word that comes to mind when you look at the state of sort of civility and respect in our politics today. Yeah, upset, chaos, civility probably non-existent, on alert, missing, depressing, discouraged. So choice. We have choice. Actually, that's a word that I want you to think about as we go through this session this afternoon. And in that, I think we really are in a moment right now when, imagine how you feel as democracy advocates. Imagine how the energy in the country can go, and even last year, 2020, in the lean during a pandemic and all the chaos that was involved in our elections, the rest of the country did not have the kind of history that you all did in vote by mail. So there was a lot of change and sort of turbulence, and we had one of the largest voter turnouts in history. So can you imagine that Americans are both hungry for connection and respect, but they're also interested in our democracy and can be activated and called on? And we have a choice in how we handle this emergency or urgent time in our democracy. I think today there's a couple things I'll want to do together with you. And one is to sort of talk a little bit about this division environment that we're in and how we might address it. Two, I want you to really think about your own spheres of influence and how you might foster connections and understanding across differences, be those political, racial. I think a lot of our work at the National Institute for Civil Discourse is around political differences and trying to bridge some of those divides with protecting the democracy in mind. But I also want you to have a chance to sort of reflect and connect together. As leaguers, we're going to do some work in small groups of 3, and I'm going to thank Amanda for her help in putting you into small groups for deeper conversation and reflection. And then, as Becky was talking about what candidate forums coming up, other things that you're doing either with the state league or within your local league, I really want you to think about something that you're doing as we go through this next 90 minutes, something that you're doing, something in maybe your league activities that you think you can apply some of the learnings from today's session. And then, of course, as you go through your next series of sessions over the next few days, how you can apply that to your league programs, projects, ideas that you're either doing now or that you want to do in order to sort of strengthen our democracy. So before we go, I'll be sharing several videos, having you then discuss them in your small groups, coming back together in full group to discuss together. But I want to ask you, how do you think, and you can go ahead and let's start to practice, maybe go ahead and raise your hand if those of you who've been living on Zoom right now. Thank you. Actually, those of you who would like to turn your cameras on, I would encourage you to do that, because especially in our small groups, you're going to want to be seeing your conversation partners, unless you get sort of bandwidth challenge, but I'll encourage you to do that. And thank you for staying muted until you're in a conversation moment. In this moment, I'd like you, if you would go ahead and if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little button that says reactions. And then you can, there's an opportunity to raise hands. If a few of you would just go ahead and raise your hand, raise your virtual hand. There you go, and put you in a queue. I'd like to hear how you think, how you've seen rancor and divisions and polarizations affecting our civic life, or what you've been doing through the league. So great. And then when I call on you, go ahead and unmute yourself. Margaret, I see you first.
Hi. I actually, the word that I put in was progress, because I think that awareness has increased, and there's always been division. It was just kind of under the surface. So the fact that we are now aware, it's not surprising that we've gotten pushback. As people have begun to say, hey, there is a problem. And I think just for myself, I knew I didn't know what the extent of the problem was. It was all kind of under the surface. And now I'm much more aware. So in terms of trying to take this and apply it. We are going to be doing, I don't know how many people are aware of the Harvard case study, but we have done some of that. We're going to do a program in about a week and a half. And we will have teachers and students who are talking about Martin Luther King, which is one of the common things, and the struggle for Black voting rights. There may be people there who still have some prejudices, although I think as teachers and league members, they're not likely to. But if something came up, I think there would be an opportunity to use skills to try to apply civil discourse, sort of to try to ask people why they're thinking that, and try to listen. And I'm more and more convinced that trying to bridge the divides depends on listening and respect.
Yay! I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Margaret. All right, Sheila, would you unmute yourself and share just a little, how have you seen the divisions and polarization affecting our life?
I think what I see is that it's really easy to retreat into the people I'm comfortable talking with. I don't even write letters to the editor because I don't want to be on anybody's radar. Yeah. But what's happening is we really lapse into stereotyping and otherizing, somebody who doesn't see things the same way. And I think that's, once we do that, we're putting up, blinders, and we're plugging our ears. And so we automatically think that they're the other and they're the enemy. And I think that's something we have to be able to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Hear, 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 hear. Thank you, Sheila. Meredith, would you unmute yourself?
Yes. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi.
Haven't seen you for years.
Good to see you again.
Yeah. Well, in New Mexico, the league, not all the local leagues, but most of them are working on a project that we're calling New Mexico Listens, because we believe that respectful civil conversations can help people remember that our common ground is stronger than all of our social, political, and economic differences. And, the polarization that we've seen in our country in recent years. So we believe that civic engagement requires people to listen deeply to each other, to understand values. And so we're doing things like we're developing training materials for conversation facilitators. We're trying to work with an intersection of people not in our regular league areas, but in more rural areas and with some of our tribal communities, with schools and so on, connecting it to the social studies standards, which are being revised to be more inclusive and diverse. And anyway, we're also going to be working with independent media so that we can help to get some accurate assessments of information, do more kind of media literacy projects so that people are aware that part of the polarization is happening because of the corporate dominant media. And we've got to get the voices out there, independent journalists and the voices from local leaders and community organizations, so we can promote democracy. And one of the things I'm recommending is that all leagues get in touch with their humanities councils, because the NEH, the National Endowment for Humanities, is giving $50,000 to each council to work on this initiative that is in 5 years in anticipation of the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And the idea is to have these democracy building initiatives. And so they're different in each state, but I encourage you, we're working. So we're getting, working with the 50,000 to pay for, facilitators and students as well as professional facilitators. But do check in with your humanities council. And the theme is Creating a More Perfect Union. It's right
Great.
up.
So
Okay,
perfect. So perfect. Okay, that's wonderful, Meredith. And,
thank
I'll
you.
encourage you when you're in your small groups, and then at the end, as we come out and do some more larger report out, that you remember these kind of opportunities. So, you know, these are some of the things that I'm hearing, both listening, deep listening. So let's take Robin and Marge just quickly, if you could.
Yes. I have my hand up, but it disappeared. Oh, there it is. Okay, well, yes, in Douglas County down here, we're in a tough spot. And it's just very intense. We're really outnumbered, and we're just having all kinds of anti-vax and anti-masking traumas, it seems like, you know, from school board events to actual school events. That it's, and plus with the COVID going on, it makes it very difficult to even get together.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're Zooming as a league and we get together with others, but attendance is low.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking people are discouraged or don't want to pay attention.
Right.
Or what,
Right.
I'm not sure. So,
Right.
you know, we've got huge challenges down here, but we are reaching out to other organizations to put on forums.
Great.
And we're hoping for a forum with the county commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to find ways to speak out and bridge the gap.
Yeah, good.
So,
I mean, I really do think in this moment of pandemic and other times of divisions so heightened, the need for connection and the opportunity for human to human connection through conversation, through deep listening is one of the things that will help us sort of heal some of these divides. Thank you, Robin. Marge, we just do quickly, and I see Kaylor, sorry, but go ahead, Marge, if you wouldn't just quickly.
Yeah, very briefly. I just wanted to say that special challenges for those of us who work on really hot button issues, and I work on gun safety issues. And I just wanted to say how when you become a target of vitriol and your name gets out there in this world of advocacy, it can be extremely difficult to even have a conversation. So I'm looking for any tips that you might have as far as those of us who kind of are on the front lines in our advocacy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet, Marge. Thank you. Okay, I see one more hand quickly. See, Kaylor. Hello.
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 I'm from Lane County, and our league has decided, although we're not quite ready to give up on adults, what we're going to try is educating a younger generation. We've bought Democracy, a case study books for every high school in Lane County. One book for every high school in Lane County. And we've nominated teachers to take the course from the organization back
Harvard.
east. I can't think of it right now.
Yeah,
in
out of
hopes
Harvard,
that we
yeah.
can educate a younger group of people to consider a more civil and engage them in politics, period. So
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that Harvard course that a couple of you have mentioned, and especially the one coming up about MLK, really great program. So I applaud you for doing that. I think as we think about sort of, you know, human beings, we've built divides. We've had divides for a long time. We've created divides, you know, at a cellular level. We as human beings are not different, but the creation of our cultures and our human constructs have elevated those differences. And I think, as some of you shared, we're right now in a story, in a big national narrative of division and this sort of fueled by media and social media, political parties, you know, really driven by sort of economic interests, by political, the desire for power. And I think that, you know, this is a particularly important time for those of us who care, as you all do, deeply about democracy and about the expression and connection, to understand, to get as much learning as we can, so that we become, sort of more sophisticated even in our approaches and our understandings about the drivers of some of our division in society, or in our country especially. I'll tell you at the end, I'll tell you something at the end, an opportunity you may want to take advantage of too. But one of the things we know at NICD is there is a deep, deep hunger in the country for connection. There is a hunger for changing the tone. There's a real desire for respect, for us to respect and to connect. And I think if we remember some of that hunger, even though there's this narrative of division around us, Americans have more in common than we really are led to believe. And even on the advocacy front, when we go into differences, because our democracy thrives on vibrant differences of ideas, right? Some of the best solutions come out because we have different life experiences that come into creating some of the solutions and advancing them. But if we honor the differences with respect, some of the deep listening that several of you mentioned, and we'll have a couple of videos and small group conversations to sort of deepen your thinking and maybe provoke some ideas among you. But we know, and I've had the privilege of working for the last few years after leaving the National League, that conversation that is done in a way that offers equal voice, that offers a chance for people to be heard, that goes into sort of tapping into our core values and finding where we have commonalities. Those kind of things build bridges across difference, and those kind of things help us advance some of these sticky, thorny issues. And help us engage productively, engage our differences productively. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we brought together NICD and several other organizations. We brought together Americans from every region of the country. Their ages were from 21 to 84. They were all across the political spectrum. And we brought them into small group conversations about infrastructure. Now, some people care a lot about infrastructure. Some people are like, I don't really care. But this group that gathered, we found that 91% of them, you don't hear this story in the media, right? But 91% of the people that gathered wanted Congress to work in a bipartisan fashion. 78%, all different, didn't know each other, not connected at all, but came together through an online platform like this and a constructed process. 78% found they had more in common than they expected. So we sort of have this perception gap. We think all the other side is worse or bad. We don't have anything in common, no connection. 78% found they had more in common than they expected. And 90% said they would like to do something like that again. Be in conversation with diverse groups of Americans, and because they came together around an issue, something that they cared about, they wanted changed. So I think this moment really, I do feel is a transformational moment. And those of you who've been around longer, been through things, may feel this too. It's transformational. I feel like there is a civic rising that's been happening so maybe it's in response to some of the divisions. It's in response to us becoming worried about maybe the fragility of our democracy. As somebody mentioned earlier, there's more of an awareness. I think those things are to our advantage now, to be really all hands on deck, and to really try and help us work through a more sustainable, sort of thriving, fair, just, equitable, living up to the promise that America offers, but that we've never fully realized. I think, the good news about division and polarization, maybe if there is good news, is we human beings created it. If it's something we created, it's something we have the power to change. And whether it's individually in our own lives, one-on-one conversation, in your own sphere of influence, or whether it's in groups of us together, like leagues and partners in different communities, we have the power to change it and to shift it. We've seen through history times of division, Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and we have shifted to a new reality after those moments. I think, we've got a long way to go, but I do think it's within our power to sort of create new connections, to engage our differences in ways that are meant to help us thrive. So I want you to think about that as we go through this session together. And I'm going to share a little short video with you now. I'm going to invite you, and then Amanda will help break you into small groups of 3. I'd like you to, again, as we go through each of these videos and your small group conversations, I'll have a sort of a question or 2 to prompt your discussion in the small group. But in the back of your mind, if you would continue to think about how you want to apply what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're learning, what reflections come to mind through the conversations, how you want to apply that to something you're doing in your civic life or league activity, something like that. So if you would keep those in mind, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, cool. All right, let me then share, and bear with us. I hope, here we go. I'm going to share a short video with you, and then I'll take you to the next.
Move your guilty ass to Ferguson or shut your pie hole. Dave from Chicago. I'd written this article about the events in Ferguson, Missouri after the death of Michael Brown, and I think Dave's response to me is part of a larger problem in our society. When we encounter ideas that we don't like, we shut them down or dismiss them instead of engaging with them. The question is, what do we do about it? I'm John Anazu, and I'm the author of Confident Pluralism, Surviving and Thriving Through Deep Difference. The differences that we have don't just affect what we think, but how we think and how we see the world. This plays out all around our lives. Red states and blue states, Whole Foods and Chick-fil-A, Fox News and MSNBC. Our country faces 2 distinct challenges right now. The first is we're too quick to dismiss and insult other points of view. The second challenge, just as problematic, is we surround ourselves with people who think just like us and who don't actually challenge our ideas. Imagine what my own writing would look like if I only shared drafts with my mom, who thinks everything I write is gold. One of the new challenges we face today is with social media, and it's not that the news is more partisan or that we have more echo chambers. We've always had those. The challenge, I think, though, is that the volume of what we're hearing has just ratcheted up. When I was growing up, I would get the news maybe twice a day. I'd read the morning paper and I'd watch the evening news. Now I'm getting news updates every 3 minutes on my phone, and that's reinforcing what I think. That's making me angrier at the people I don't agree with, but I'm not challenging my ideas. So one of the things we need to do is put a pause on the instant updates and find the spaces where we can actually reflect. Confident pluralism is a framework for engaging across difference. Confidence doesn't mean arrogance or certainty. It means being secure enough in your own beliefs that you aren't afraid to engage with others and have them challenged. Through confidence, we can better embrace pluralism. Pluralism doesn't mean relativism or pretending like our differences don't matter. It means recognizing the reality of our deep differences and working toward common ground. One reviewer of my book suggested that it was doomed to immediate irrelevance. And I don't think that's true. I actually have some optimism that we can move forward. And one of the reasons is that we've been here before. We've long had deep differences in our country, and sometimes even against great odds, we've found a way to maintain a modest unity. So what can you and I do in our daily lives and our interactions with other people? Rather than demand acceptance, we can choose tolerance. And instead of insisting on moral certainty, we can engage others in humility. And rather than resorting to outrage, We can cultivate patience. Every one of us can choose to modulate our social media practices. We can choose to diversify our news feeds to make sure we're hearing more than one side of a story. We can choose to reach out to someone who's different than us to share a meal or a conversation. I seldom find someone who has nothing to offer me. That actually, even the people who disagree with me the most have some insight or some perspective or some bit of wisdom that's going to make me a better person, a better citizen, a better friend. And I learn best when I'm open to listening to other people. We're not always going to bridge ideological difference, but we can start to bridge relational difference, and we can start to see each other as human beings.
Great. Yeah, with that, I want you to think, we're going to again break you into small groups of 3, and I'll put this question into the chat, and we'll broadcast it when you're in your room, in your small groups. But you'll have about 10 minutes or so, and so that's about 3 minutes a person to share what was one thing that struck you from this video. And if you could share a time when someone from a different political perspective or life experience offered you an insight that made you consider something differently. So think it here. I'll put those into the chat. So you've got those as you go off. And then we'll have Amanda, thank you for putting people into groups of 3. Welcome back as you're coming back. Yay. So great to see the faces. Let me take just a minute here now to see, on your reactions button, there's a little sort of thumbs up, or let's see, maybe there's some tears. Did people, if you thought, did you have a rich sort of starting a rich conversation, starting your brain perking? Give a thumbs up if that was part of, or Norman, hi, the heart. Good to see you. Yeah, good. Glad to have you, in these kind of conversations. I do think if we had a little more time to pause, reflect, and bring you all back into a little bit of feedback loop is helpful. So we'll do that after a couple of our next breakouts, because I do want to have some of the sharing from the small groups come back into the full group room, especially as you think about your league work, your civic life, how we may build bridges across our differences and to strengthen our democracy. So I'm going to share with you now another video. It's one that we've done at the National Institute for Civil Discourse. And we're fortunate to have on our board somebody like Katie Couric, who many of you may know from her journalism experience. And then we've often at NICD, we find a lot of wisdom in the experience of everyday Americans, and sort of inviting the voices of everyday Americans into our thinking together, into our work together, into sort of elevating stories. It is our hope really to elevate. I think some of the saving grace in our country is found within us everyday Americans who care about our democracy. So I'm going to share with you now another video, and then we'll ask you to chew on another question together.
Welcome to Engaging Differences, a program that reminds us how we can work together to address the challenges of our day. In today's society, we're connected by social media and technology, and yet we feel more disconnected than ever. Our politics are polarized. The media is partisan. Families are divided and friendships are strained. Here's what some of our fellow Americans from all backgrounds and political persuasions have to say about the problem, but more importantly, what we can do about it.
I think there are many who feel that we're in decline as a nation and as a democracy. And it's due to our inability to constructively communicate with each other on the issues that are facing us.
Growing up in a Black community, growing up in a low income community, everything can be so one-sided and narrow that when you grow and you learn and you become more and you make acquaintances with different people from different political views, it allows you to see more things that you wasn't exposed to in the beginning.
I think the most important thing that we can do as Americans, for our country, for our world, is engage differences constructively. Yes, we have huge issues we need to figure out, but ultimately the heart of all of it and the foundation of all of it is learning how to live, work, and play with people that may not think like you. One of the greatest reasons why our country is amazing is we are a melting pot.
I knew someone who knew about my religion and they just assumed that I felt a certain way about their identity because of my religion. And so they kind of came at me like attacking me, and that was really a frustrating experience for me. I felt like no matter what I said, I couldn't win. So then I found myself trying to point out to them how hypocritical they were being. And it really, as soon as that happened, there was no chance for productive conversation.
Sometimes I find it healthy not just to go to the people who reinforce my ideas, but people who might really take something and think carefully about it, and maybe even challenge me on it. I have a office neighbor right through this wall. He and I think differently, and he likes to challenge my Pollyanna assumptions, and is good at it, and makes me think carefully about what I'm saying, how I'm reading, what I'm thinking about this idea or this text or this author or this thought.
Where I'm at, I'm a commander of a medevac unit. I'm a captain in the Idaho Army National Guard. And I found that, especially in my position, there is no way at all that I could be successful in executing my job, especially in the combat environment, if I wasn't able to, or even willing to listen to any of my guys. It's incumbent upon us as commissioned officers to, talk to everybody in our unit. They have something important to contribute, and all you have to do is ask and listen. And if they disagree, we'll listen even harder, because there's probably a good reason why they disagree.
One time I tried to reason with somebody who had a different point of view, and we just both weren't really listening to each other, so that didn't really work out, because we both came into the conversation with what we wanted it to end up as, and in two different ways. So we weren't going to convince each other, because they weren't listening to me, I wasn't listening to them. It was like we were both talking to walls. So
being the only African American woman in the room and in the spaces that I normally interact in, and having to connect with individuals who don't understand what it's like to be a minority, nor what it's like to grow up in a low income community. I've always had to share personal stories about myself to allow others to understand where I come from and why these issues are so important to not only me but to other Black communities and other minority or underrepresented communities.
I think you have to come from like a place of humility. You can't come into a conversation thinking that you have the best opinion and it's morally correct, and that everybody else is like morally wrong if they don't agree with you, and you've got to respect the other person. You like have to see them as like a real human being. They're not just like something to be argued with. And I think that that mindset going into these types of conversations is really what sets the stage for any productive conversation to happen.
It's important to know, like, it's okay to be wrong sometimes. Like, you don't always have to be right. And I think it's okay to have the approach of, okay, like, I was wrong. Like, I was uneducated on this, and not trying to have too much of an ego where you can't even change your opinion.
One thing that I have to remind myself is I need to check my tone. I mean, if you have a holier than thou tone, of course you're not going to have someone really engage with you.
And that maybe our ability to not just give solutions or to pass judgments would be enhanced if we could ask better questions.
I want to help you, or I want to understand where you're coming from, rather than I want to be right.
When I listen well, sometimes it even makes the other person listen better.
To be able to speak, without being spoken over. Listening also, you need active listening. I mean, body language is critical when you're talking.
We need to learn to understand each other, where each person is coming from. If that means walking a mile in someone else's shoes, then we need to do that, to understand what those people are going through, instead of just assuming that we understand.
To just shut off that storyline in your own head, and just listen.
Acknowledging that our differences are what unites us. People let that divide us, but it's really kind of what makes us American.
So I want you to think a little bit as we're going to go back into another small group conversation, but as you're thinking about this, what you heard in this video, and as I was mentioning to Becky before, I'll put into the chat links to each of these videos, and then also send to Amanda links to each of these videos that have some of the content or the books from a different author that you might want to take up afterwards and go deeply or remember or revisit. So not to worry, all these resources will be available to you. But as you go into your next small group, I want you to think about sort of one thing that you picked up that you may consider applying to your own interactions across differences. And I'll put these in the chat as well. And then in your own experience, what has worked well when you're engaging someone with a different viewpoint? So again, what was one thing you picked up that you could apply to your own interactions? And in your own experience, think of that and tell that story about what's worked well when you've been engaging someone with a different viewpoint. And as we put those questions into the chat, I'll ask again, Amanda, to break you up into your small groups, and then you'll have 10 minutes again to discuss. Welcome back, everyone. As we're coming back together into the full room, I'd like to invite 3 people. If you would raise your hand and share, raise your virtual hand and share something that worked well when you've engaged someone with a different point of view. Could either be your own experience or something you heard in the group. If I could have 3 of you just raise your hand and share what worked well when you engage someone with a different point of view. And if nobody raises their hand, this will be the first league meeting that I've been part of where people were shy to share.
Yeah, was talking with Chris Kobe, and we were just talking how sometimes it's hard to connect with people, as we know. And so rather than, it's been a while since I've done this, but I'm looking forward to another occasion where I can meet someone, and rather than debate, I think a lot of times we get into the debate mode and we want to say, oh, why do you think that way? And why don't you think this way? And so forth. Instead, we should listen actively, talk about, just get to know somebody for one thing. And I also think I should do more volunteer work, where I'm not just doing league business. Mm-hmm. And then I might get to know other than league people.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's a big key.
Robin, I think that's a good point. And I think our next breakout in video, you'll see a little bit about that kind of listening. But I really do strongly encourage us to listen authentically and deeply and with curiosity. If you're leaning in with curiosity to another human being to find a sense of commonality or what their core values are, why they're engaged around this particular issue, that's when you get to the rich human-to-human connection. Thank you for raising that, Robin. We'll take Meredith, Nancy, and Jamie, and then we'll break out again. Meredith.
Okay, I was with Jamie, and we certainly agreed on gun safety issues and so on, but we did not agree on vaccinations and the importance of having vaccinations. We didn't really get a chance to finish our discussion, but I think we were able to listen respectfully to each other. And, I think, honestly, that is so important. In our previous conversation, which we had with Norman too, was the word respect is core. Respect. We're not going to always agree, but respect and listen deeply.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Nancy.
I recounted this story at a party a while back when President Obama was in his either first or second administration. It was a social party, and the host ticked all of these boxes. He had a wonderful tone of voice. He asked me an open question. It was very welcoming. He had good body language, and he listened without judgment. And that was, what do you like about President Obama? And that was it. And I had a feeling that he probably had voted for the Republican candidate, but you would not have known that from the way he approached me. And
beautiful.
That thinking, nobody has ever asked me that before in that way. It was so non-confrontational. And it was appropriate, since we were kind of co-hosts at the party in his home, that we not get into any kind of a political fight. But I'm feeling that he was curious. So,
Good.
So that it fit right in with the video, the notes I just took about non-judgment, welcoming, body language, tone, questions.
Great. Thank you for that great share, Nancy. And I did see, Jamie, did you want to share just briefly, or?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
I do animal rights, and I come across this on a daily basis for years. I'm vegan, I don't believe in eating animals, and I have to teach people about animals and about eating healthy and what's right for the environment and all these issues. And what works best for me is when I talk to people is we're all human, and I may have been born vegan like all the other humans, but I was raised on eating meat. So another person, I can understand what they're going through, and I can talk to them with love and respect and tell them, I've been there before. I know what that feels like. I felt like that too. And to connect with somebody, because we all have a connection. And to connect with somebody and to teach them, try to show them, So I guess that's the best thing I could say, is to teach people and to have that common thread and respect other people.
Great. I think, those are really key. The resonance and the understanding about what they're going through, that reflection back, it sounds like a non-judgmental way to approach somebody with difference. So thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing that.
Okay.
Appreciate that very much. Okay, now we're going to do our third and final sort of video and breakout. And I want you again now to really think about, and I'll ask you as we come back to report out, to type into the chat, and have a few verbal shares, what you've been thinking about these learnings and how you can put them into practice in your civic life or on a league project as specifically as you can. Okay. This session, we're going to do a little piece on sort of conflict and conflict in communication, because across our differences, I'll tell you one of the things that I never learned as a young person, and still maybe hard to learn, that conflict can be a good thing when done well and with respect. I've always sort of learned avoid conflict, right? Well, we are in different ideas. We are in moments of different ideas, and we need to connect across these bridges. So how we develop the strength and the courage to have challenging conversations, part of learning. None of us are perfect. We won't always do this well, but like Nancy was saying, that conversation she had with the gentleman about President Obama, so great, because he created sort of a welcoming environment and an inquiry and ask questions. So with that, I'm going to we'll have you watch this video, and then after you hear the kind of pieces of this video, I'd like you to, and we'll put the question in the chat again, where do you see the three practices, putting the three understandings into practice in your life and in your LWV or your civic sort of project?
I feel uncomfortable around conflict.
Now we're here today to find out how to argue.
But conflict is useful. The question is, how do you deal with conflict most effectively? Here we go. I am author of Negotiating the Non-Negotiable, How to Resolve Your Most Emotionally Charged Conflicts. Have you found yourself in an argument that felt so frustrating, so at a core aggravating?
That's the silliest opinion I've ever heard.
It felt just non-negotiable. Well, congratulations, you're a human being. We all experience conflict in our lives. And seeing what's going on in our world today, my hunch is you were probably having at least one of these conflicts about politics. Our country has fallen into what I believe is a tribal trap. Anything that other side says, I shall not believe, I shall not give any credibility to, and I'm going to do everything I can to prove I'm right, you're wrong, and to stifle you down, to raise me up. The problem is not with the what. What are we arguing about? The problem was with the how.
How should we argue?
How can we be more effective? And what I've found is that there's three big barriers that we can actually overcome to have more effective conversations. The big things: 1, identity; 2, appreciation; and 3, affiliation. Let's start with identity.
Now, first of all, this is a hot issue.
Why do we get so emotional in these conflict situations? It often goes back to something deeper: identity. What are the core values, the core beliefs that are feeling threatened inside of you as you're having that conversation with the other side? The moment your identity gets hooked in these conflicts, all of a sudden your emotions become 100 times more powerful. Boy, this is a wholly different conflict now. It's now your pride. Your sense of self is on the line. You need to know who you are and what you stand for. What are the values and beliefs that are driving me to fight for this stance on this issue? The more you understand who you are, the more you can try to get your purpose met and stay balanced, even when the other threatens those core values and beliefs. Each side wants to feel appreciated, and yet the last thing they want to do is to appreciate the other side. That's a problem.
Listen and understand.
When you're in the midst of the conflict, don't talk. Take the first 10 minutes, consciously listen to the other side. What's the value behind their perspective? What's the logic, the rationale? Why do they hold this perspective on immigration or healthcare? Once you truly understand and see the value in their perspective, let them know, I hear where you're coming from. And you know what? That makes sense. There is nothing more in the world that we like than to feel appreciated. Recognize your power to appreciate them. Third, affiliation. What's the emotional connection like between you and the other side? We typically approach these conflict situations as me versus you. My opinion on healthcare versus yours. My party's perspectives on immigration versus yours. That's just gonna leave the two of you like rams butting heads.
Find common ground.
Turn that other person from an adversary into a partner. So it's no longer me versus you, but the two of us facing the same shared problem. Ask the other person, look, what's your advice on how we can get as many of our interests met at the same time? Change the nature of your conversation. Now you put these three things into practice, it can transform your relationships. Imagine what would happen if we started a revolution, but a positive revolution of greater understanding, greater appreciation, greater affiliation, how we could transform politics, how we could transform our country and ultimately our world. I believe it's possible, but it starts with each one of us.
Thank you, Amanda. And I would like to do a quick check here. Are people able to go another sort of 5 minutes or so beyond the end time? Because I realize we're getting close to the end here. Can you just kind of wave if that's possible? Okay, great. Thank you. Good. Because I would like, this is the place where, again, we're going to break you into small groups, different small groups. We're going to shuffle you a little. And I'm going to ask you, put the question in the chat. How can you put these sort of three understandings of identity, appreciation, and affiliation into a practice, into your life, into the league or civic project you've been thinking about through this session? And when we come out of that your small group conversation, I'm going to invite all of you, as many of you as you want to type your answer into the chat, or your answers or an answer into the chat. And then we'll invite a few of you to just share verbally again. So as we go into, we want to give you again 10 minutes in your breakouts to explore how you can put these three understandings into practice in your life or into a civic project at the league or a league project. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for your indulgence of going a little over on our time. Appreciate that. If I'm going to invite you to go ahead and type into chat, put some information in there, but go ahead, I'll add it later again. Put into chat, type in there how you're thinking about putting these learnings into practice in your civic life or your league project life. And then, yeah, redistricting, listen, not lecture. Excellent, Marge. And you were talking about, engaging people around advocacy. There may be some more on that front we want to dig deeper into it in a future session for sure. Planning to work harder. Learning about self, that's wonderful. Change starts with each of us. We have the power to be more aware ourselves, be reflective, think about our sphere of influence. Good. Join an organization and volunteer to, yes, that relates to practices you're not already, that you're learning about. Let's see. see the elevator speech, building stronger affiliation with nonprofit board or community storytelling. Thank you, Alice. It is absolutely vital that we tell stories, stories of connection, stories of our own experience of engaging differences. Beautiful, wonderful, yes. Try to tolerate emotional differences on hot button issues. Thank you, Margaret. And be really in that pause, breath, focus. Remember, it's another human being or other human beings across from you. Great. Engaging someone's core beliefs is rarely useful, says Nancy. Expressing appreciation for their point of view and saying, you may feel differently in a very respectful way, in an inquiry way, asking that question, well, tell me, how did you come to that belief? Or how did you come to that position? Or why are you concerned in that way? I really want to understand. And being genuine in that, that will go a long way to better understand my own identity. Yeah. So that your own core, you have the confidence to stand with respect to your own core, but also be willing to listen and hear other ideas around you. It's not a threat, not seeing it as a threat, but as a way to maybe expand your understanding. That's great. So I think these are all just really wonderful points. What I've put into the chat as we close here is there is an LWV NICD Civil Discourse Network. Some of you are part of it or joined. If you're interested in getting put on the mailing list, we do every first and third Saturday of the month. We'll do just an email blast that has like a resource of opportunities or sessions you may want to attend, or resources you may want to take advantage of that other groups are doing, from the dialogue or bridge building community. And we have our next, and then we do some meetings that are offered to the whole network with Zoom meetings or training sessions. Our next one is going to be this coming Tuesday, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's with Dr. Terry Wu, and he's a neuroscientist, and he's done has background in marketing, so he's understanding this whole big sort of marketing megillah that's happening around us now, and also the neuroscience that moves us as human beings to react or respond, to connect or to reject. So if you're interested in attending that one, it's Tuesday at 10 a.m. your time, West Coast time, and there's a link in the chat to sign up, to sign up for it. If you do sign up, and if for some reason you can't make it, we will be recording it too, and we'll share that afterwards. But being in a real learning space, that is a place of really beauty, wonder. That's what I'm in, and that's, I think, what we hope that little network is a learning community for all of us who care about democracy. So with that, I guess I want to thank you. I did have another song I wanted to send you out with, but we are getting late. So maybe I'll just say goodbye. And if you want the song that I was gonna play, let me see if I got it here. It's Tim McGraw, and it's called Humble and Kind. And it's the kind of energy that I'd love to have us think about. I'll put it into the chat. And then maybe as you're all saying goodbye, or if you want to stick around and hear it, I can share that too, if you're interested. Well, I will say with deep appreciation to you all for all that you're doing for democracy. My heart is totally with the League because it's so filled with smart, dedicated democracy advocates, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe I will share this for anybody who wants to listen, and then otherwise for everybody else, thank you, bid you good night and good sessions for your conferences as you go through the next few days.